Discipline is not a personality trait you either have or you don't. It is a set of specific, daily, observable behaviors. 9 of them that either run in your life or they don't. The man who appears disciplined is not built differently than you. He is running 9 habits that you are not, or not running them consistently enough for the compound effect to be visible, or running some of them while the absence of others produces the same inconsistency that motivation-based approaches always produce. The performance of discipline is widespread. The behavior of it is not. Most men who describe themselves as working on their discipline are working on the idea of discipline, consuming content about it, thinking seriously about it, maintaining the intention of becoming more disciplined at a more convenient point. The 9 habits are not ideas. They are daily behaviors. They run or they don't. And whether they run determines whether the discipline compounds into the man the intention describes. Bruce Wayne did not build the discipline that Gotham eventually required by performing seriousness about preparation. He built it through 9 specific daily behaviors, repeated in rooms no one watched, producing no visible output for years, compounding into something the daylight eventually ran on. 9 habits. The ones that actually build discipline. Here's every one. Habit 1. Keep one small promise to yourself every day. Not a large commitment. The smallest completable daily act that was promised and honored. The alarm set and answered. The practice opened and begun. The commitment made at night held in the morning. Self-trust. The foundational material discipline is built from is constructed through the accumulated record of kept promises, not the dramatic ones, the small daily ones that nobody sees, and that compound across months into the specific confidence that when you make a commitment to yourself, you are someone who honors it. One promise. Daily, kept. Before anything else on this list will work. Habit 2. Do the hard thing first. Every day, before the comfortable tasks and the easy wins and the low-friction work. The thing the resistance is pointing at. The hard chapter. The difficult conversation. The skill in its uncomfortable early stage. The practice of leading with the hard thing daily builds the approach reflex that determines whether difficulty is met or avoided across the full life. The man who habitually moves toward the hard thing first arrives at every significant challenge with an approach reflex already established. The man who habitually defers it arrives at every significant challenge with an avoidance reflex equally established. The daily choice about which comes first is the daily choice about which reflex gets stronger. Habit 3. Protect 1 hour from all reactive input. Every day, 1 hour, in the morning where possible, whenever available, where not. That belongs entirely to the one important thing. No messages, no notifications, no incoming demands. The hour is not negotiated, not reduced when the day is busy, not surrendered when the inbox makes compelling arguments for its own priority. Discipline requires the protected space to operate. The man who has never built the protected hour has never tested whether the discipline is present, because the discipline has never had conditions in which to run without being interrupted before it could produce anything. Habit 4. Move the body daily with deliberate effort, not incidental movement, directed, physical practice that requires something from the body. The reason this habit belongs in a discipline list rather than a fitness list is not the physical outcome. It is the daily encounter with the gap between what the body wants to stop and what the practice requires to continue. Every session that crosses that gap deposits into the capacity for doing the same across every other domain. Physical practice is the most reliable daily mechanism for building the general purpose approach over avoidance capacity that discipline in every other area runs on. Stay with habits 5 through 9. The first 4 build the foundation of discipline at the individual and daily level. What comes next builds the architecture that makes the foundation sustainable across weeks and months. And habit 8 is the one that most men who genuinely build lasting discipline identify as the single most structural change they made when the intermittent practice finally became consistent. Habit 5 track, the practice, not the result. Every day, 1 mark, a date, a line, a check that records whether the commitment happened. Not the quality of the session, not the output produced, not the progress toward the goal, whether it happened. The streak of marks builds a pattern that the brain begins to protect. After 21 consecutive marks, the brain has a pattern it identifies as worth maintaining. Breaking the pattern costs more than continuing it. The discipline begins running on the pattern protection mechanism rather than on the daily motivational decision. The mark is the mechanism. Make it daily, make it physical. Let the streak do what willpower alone cannot sustain. Habit 6. Build one non-negotiable daily anchor, a specific behavior at a specific time, in a specific location that runs regardless of conditions. Not the whole discipline practice, the anchor. The one thing that happens, whether the day is easy or hard, motivated or depleted, structured or chaotic. The anchor is not the most important behavior, it is the most consistent one. And consistency, held across enough repetitions, is what builds the identity, the internal description of who this person is, that makes the other habits easier to run, because they are consistent with who the anchor has established this person to be. Habit 7. Review the week, honestly, every Sunday. Not a plan for next week, a review of this one. What happened? What didn't? Where the resistance was highest, where the pattern held, and where it dissolved. The weekly review does 3 things the daily practice cannot. It makes the direction of the week visible in a way the individual day obscures. It identifies the specific friction points where the discipline consistently fails, and it gives the coming week a starting point built on accurate information, rather than the optimistic projection that produced the previous week's plan. 10 minutes. Every Sunday. Honest. The discipline that is reviewed weekly is correctable. The discipline that is not reviewed accumulates the same friction points indefinitely. Habit 8. Protect the recovery that makes the discipline sustainable. 1 complete rest day weekly. The session ended at a predetermined time. The sleep protected as the infrastructure rather than the reward. Discipline without built-in recovery does not compound, it depletes. The man who runs the discipline without the recovery produces progressively lower quality output and progressively higher resistance days until the practice collapses under the accumulated deficit. Wayne trained to exhaustion, and then he stopped. The preparation was bounded, the recovery was structural. Build the recovery into the architecture before the depletion requires it. The discipline that includes the recovery outperforms the discipline that pushes through it across every time horizon, longer than a week. Habit 9. Never miss twice. The streak will break. A session will be missed. A day will be lost to conditions outside the pattern. The man who treats the missed day as the end of the streak and the permission to abandon the practice has made a structural error in how he relates to imperfection. The man who treats the missed day as a single data point and returns to the practice the following day has a one-day interruption rather than an abandonment. Never miss twice is not a lower standard. It is a more accurate understanding of what discipline actually requires, not perfection, but the default of return. The return after the miss is the discipline, not the unbroken streak. The return. You came into this expecting 9 habits that require extraordinary willpower, extraordinary dedication, extraordinary conditions to sustain. Every habit on this list is available today, in ordinary conditions, with ordinary available time. Not all 9 simultaneously, 3, chosen because they address the specific gaps in the current practice, starting today. 3 habits running produce more compound discipline than 9 habits planned. The planning is not the discipline. The running is the discipline. 3 running habits compounding across 30 days produce a man who is demonstrably different from the man who planned 9 habits and ran none. Not dramatically different, structurally different. And structurally different is the only kind of different that compounds into the man the discipline was supposed to build. Tonight, 3, not 9, 3. The 3 whose absence most specifically explains the gap between the discipline that is intended and the discipline that is currently running. If the small daily promise is absent, name it tonight. 1 sentence. The specific completable daily act, written before sleep, honored in the morning. That is the foundation. Everything else on this list is built on top of it. If the hard thing first is absent, name the hard thing tomorrow morning before anything else. Write it on a piece of paper before sleep. When the morning arrives, that paper is the first instruction. If the recovery is absent, set the rest day tonight. Write it into the week before the week decides for you that every day is a working day. Wayne's discipline was not built in a single session of superior effort. It was built in the daily return to the practice across years that produced no visible output and no external validation. 3 habits running today. 3 habits running tomorrow. The discipline compounds from the first running, not from the planning. The running. Serious about discipline means 9 habits running, not 9 habits understood, not 9 habits planned, not 9 habits intended. Running. Start 3 today. The discipline is in the running. 3 habits today, not the perfect 3, the start able 3. The discipline that builds the man starts with the habits that run, not the habits that are most admirable to plan. Start the running. The compounding follows from the first day it runs and not before. One question: which of the 9 habits, name the number, is the one most specifically absent from your current daily practice that, if running, would most change the direction of the discipline you are building? Drop it in the comments. That number is the first habit to start today. Not tomorrow, today. The running begins when the first one starts. If this separated being serious about discipline from performing seriousness about it, subscribe. More of this. The discipline is in the running. Start today.